Section 14 of The Psychology of Peoples by Gustave Le Bon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Oxenhandler. Book 3, Chapter 3. The Role of Great Men in the History of Peoples. The great advances made by each civilization have always been realized by a small elite of superior minds. Nature of their role. They synthesize all the efforts of a race. Examples supplied by great discoveries, political role of great men. They embody the dominant ideal of their race, influence of the great hallucinated. Inventors of genius transform a civilization. The fanatics and the hallucinated make history. When studying the hierarchy and the differentiation of races, we saw that what most differentiates Europeans from Orientals is that only the former possess an elite of superior men. Let us now endeavor to trace in a few lines the limits of the role of this elite. The small phalanx of eminent men possessed by a civilized people, a phalanx it would suffice to suppress in each generation to lower considerably the intellectual level of that people, constitutes the true incarnation of the forces of a race. To it is due the progress realized in the sciences, the arts, in industry, in a word, in all the branches of civilization. History shows that it is to this circumscribed elite that we owe all the advances made. Although they profit by these advances, the masses do not like being surpassed, and the greatest thinkers and inventors have often been their martyrs. And yet all the generations, all the past of a race, blossom forth in these splendid geniuses, which are the marvelous flowers of a race. They are the true glory of a nation, each member of which, down to the most humble, is entitled to be proud of them. They do not appear by chance or by a miracle, but represent the crowning point of a long past. They synthesize the greatness of their time and of their race. To favor their production and development is to favor the achievement of those advances of which humanity will reap the benefit. If we allow ourselves to be too much blinded by our dreams of universal equality, we shall be the first victims of our attitude. Equality carries inferiority in its wake. It is the dull, oppressive dream of vulgar mediocrities. It has only been realized in barbarous epochs. For equality to reign in the world, it would be necessary to bring down, little by little, whatever makes the value of a race to the level of what is least elevated in the race. But while the role of superior men in the development of a civilization is considerable, it is not, however, quite what it is generally said to be. Their action consists, I repeat, in synthesizing all the efforts of a race. Their discoveries are always the result of a long series of anterior discoveries. They build an edifice with the stones which others have slowly hewn. Historians, who in general are very simple-minded, have always thought it right to connect the name of a man with each invention. And yet, of the great inventions which have transformed the world, such as printing, gunpowder, steam, or the electric telegraph, there is not one of which it can be said that it was created by a single brain. When the genesis of discoveries of this kind are studied, it is always found that they are the outcome of a long series of preparatory efforts. The final invention is only the crowning stroke. Galileo's observation of the isochronism of the oscillations of a suspended lamp paved the way for the invention of chronometers, which were to enable sailors to trace their route across the ocean with certainty. Gunpowder resulted from the slow transformations of Grecian fire. The steam engine represents the sum of a series of inventions, each of which demanded immense labor. A Greek, had he had 100 times as much genius as Archimedes, would have been unable to discover the locomotive engine. Could he have discovered it, moreover, the discovery would have been of no use to him, as to fabricate his engine he would have had to wait until mechanics had realized advances which it took 2,000 years of efforts to achieve. The political role of great statesmen, while it is apparently more independent of the past, is nevertheless scarcely less dependent thereon than is the role of great inventors. Blinded by the dazzling brilliancy of the powerful leaders of men who have transformed the political existence of peoples, such writers as Hegel, Cousin, Carlyle, etc., have wished to make of them demigods, whose unaided genius has modified the destiny of peoples. Beyond doubt they can affect the evolution of a society, but it is not given to them to change its course. The genius of a Cromwell or a Napoleon is powerless to achieve such a task. Great conquerors can destroy towns, men, and empires by fire and sword, as a child can set fire to a museum filled with art treasures. But this destructive power must not deceive us as to the nature of their role. The influence of great politicians is only durable when, as in the case of Caesar or Richelieu, they contrive to give their efforts a direction in harmony with the needs of the moment. The true cause of their success is generally much anterior to themselves. Had he made the attempt 2 or 3 centuries earlier, Caesar would not have made the great Roman Republic accept the law of a master, and under the same conditions Richelieu would have been unable to realize the unity of France. In politics, the really great men are those who have a presentiment of the needs that are about to arise, of the events for which the past has paved the way, and who show their fellows the direction that has got to be taken. This direction perhaps was clear to nobody, but the fatalities of evolution were soon to engage therein the peoples whose destinies were momentarily in the hands of these powerful geniuses. They, too, like the great inventors, synthesize the result of a long anterior evolution. These analogies between the different categories of great men must not be carried too far. The inventors play an important part in the future evolution of a civilization, but no immediate role in the political history of peoples. The superior men to whom are due the important discoveries from the plough to the telegraph, which are the common patrimony of humanity, have never possessed the qualities of character requisite for the founding of a religion or the conquest of an empire, necessary, that is, to change visibly the face of history. The thinker is too alive to the complexity of problems ever to have very strong convictions, and too few political ends seem to him worthy of his efforts for him to attempt to realize any one of them. Inventors may modify a civilization in the long run. It is only fanatics, men of narrow intelligence but energetic character and powerful passions, who are capable of founding religions and empires. At the bidding of a Peter the Hermit, millions of men hurled themselves against the East. The words of an hallucinated enthusiast, such as Mohammed, created a force capable of triumphing over the old Greco-Roman world. An obscure monk like Luther bathed Europe in blood. The voice of a Galileo or a Newton will never have the least echo among the masses. The inventors of genius hasten the march of civilization. The fanatics and the hallucinated create history. For of what is history, as written in books, composed, if not of the long narrative of man's struggles to create an ideal, to worship it, and then to destroy it? And in the eyes of science, have such ideals more value than the vain mirages created by the action of light on the moving sands of the desert? Still, it is the hallucinated, the creators or propagators of these mirages, who have effected the most far-reaching transformations in the world. From the depth of their tombs they still inflict the yoke of their thoughts on the soul of races, and influence the character and destiny of peoples. The importance of their role must not be overlooked, but at the same time it must not be forgotten that the task they accomplished was successfully accomplished because they unconsciously embodied and expressed the ideal of their race and their epoch. A people is only led by those who embody its dreams. Moses represented for the Jews the desire for deliverance over which they had brooded during the years that they were slaves lacerated by the whips of the Egyptians. Buddha and Jesus were alive to the infinite miseries of their time, and gave a religious shape to the need for charity and pity, which at these periods of universal suffering were coming into existence in the world. Mohammed realized by means of unity of belief the political unity of a people divided into thousands of rival tribes. That soldier of genius, Napoleon, embodied the ideal of military glory, of vanity, and of revolutionary propaganda, which at the time were the characteristics of the people he led all over Europe during 15 years in pursuit of wild adventures. At bottom, then, it is ideas, and in consequence those who embody and propagate them, that rule the world. Their triumph is assured when they are defended by the hallucinated and by enthusiasts. It is of slight importance whether they be true or false. History ever teaches us that it is the most chimerical ideas that have had the most fanatical following and played the most important role. It is in the name of the most illusory chimeras that the world has been hitherto thrown into confusion, that civilizations which seemed imperishable have been destroyed, and that others have been founded. It is not, as the gospel assures us, the kingdom of heaven, but of the earth, that belongs to the poor in spirit, only provided they possess the faith that moves mountains. Philosophers who often have to devote centuries to destroying what enthusiasts have created in a day ought to bow before those who are capable of such feats. The enthusiasts form part of the mysterious forces that shape the world. They have determined the most important of the events of which history records the course. Doubtless they have only propagated illusions, but it is on these illusions, at once redoubtable, seductive, and vain, that humanity has hitherto existed, and doubtless will continue to exist. These illusions are mere shadows, but they must nevertheless be respected. Thanks to them, our forefathers knew what hope was, and in their heroic and wild pursuit of these shadows, they raised us from our primitive state of barbarism to the point we have reached today. Of all the factors in the development of civilizations, illusions are perhaps the most powerful. It was an illusion that built up the pyramids and covered Egypt for 5,000 years with colossal stone monuments. It was an illusion that in the Middle Ages raised our gigantic cathedrals and induced the Western world to dispute the possession of a tomb with the East. It is the pursuit of illusions that has founded the religions which exert their sway over half of humanity, and founded or destroyed the vastest empires. It is not in the pursuit of truth, but in that of error, that humanity has expended the most efforts. It could not attain the chimerical goals it had in view, but it was in trying to attain them that it realized all the progress it had no thought of achieving. End of section 14.